This week I'm sharing the 5 things that you can do if you want to learn filmmaking outside of film school. Hello, my name is Simon Cade and this is DSLRguide. So I've got about a year and a half of regular school left before I could go to university. So I've been thinking about this a lot, trying to work out what it is that film school has to offer and then seeing if there's any way that I can get a similar or better experience without going to college. So first up, in film school you do actually get a decent amount of time dedicated towards actually making films. So in my kind of made up film school alternative, if I don't go to college, then I would definitely make sure that I do a bunch of short films. So maybe something like a minimum of 1 short film per year. Now I'm really interested in the narrative side, but if you're more interested in kind of corporate side or documentaries, then you could still, do that kind of practice. And the thing is, while you might be able to establish a business or establish some clients who you can get to know and build an audience online maybe, the key thing, the absolute most important thing, is that you're learning tons because you're making lots of films. And I honestly believe that anyone who makes lots of films will see themselves just getting exponentially better. Now, one of the best reasons to go to film school is that you get put in a community with some other filmmakers and you get the chance to get to know them really well. So if I don't go to film school, I want to make sure that I'm not just working on my own projects with the same people. I want to branch out and work on other people's projects, even if it's just volunteering. So don't underestimate the power of networking. People often say that filmmaking is all about who you know, and just the principle that every single person who you meet, they'll know some people, and those people will know even more people. So it's definitely worth putting some real effort into getting to know people and getting to meet people. So on a more practical level, you probably have to be more active about it if you're not in film school. So this could just mean Googling freelance cinematographer and seeing if you can find anyone who you can just offer to work for free. Contact them via Twitter, contact them via the email on their website, and see if they have any projects that you can just help out and do whatever it is that needs doing. And then before you know it, you'll be able to meet a whole range of people who are hopefully in the business. And then when it comes to your own projects, there's some people who you can contact, to see if they're happy to help or if they know anyone who would be happy to help. So I think it's a case of looking for musicians you can make music videos for, interesting people you can make documentaries about, and then also agents and producers who might be able to help you get your projects going a bit later on down the road. Now, people often say that film school is the best way to learn how to use the high-end equipment. And while this might be true in terms of turning up on set and, not being completely clueless, I do think that it's definitely worth spending the maximum amount of time learning about the creative side rather than just how to use equipment. So in my film school alternative, I think I'm just going to stick with the camera I've got, the Canon T3i, and focus as much as possible on the things that make me enjoy a film. When I enjoy a film, what is it about it? Is it interesting characters, interesting ideas? I want to learn how to make those sort of things and spend as much time as possible and not waste any time at all learning about how to use, this piece of equipment or what the names of all these different technical things are. That information might be a little bit useful, but I think it's almost irrelevant when it comes to actually making a good film. So because there's only so many hours in the day, I'd like to spend as much time as possible focusing on making good films with cheap gear rather than just learning how to make a film that looks nice. And I know it's not always a one or the other, but the reality is you're going to have to prioritize one of them, and I want to spend as much time as possible on the creative side. So if I wanted to learn to speak Spanish, probably the best thing for me to do would not be to just sit in my own room and just practice speaking Spanish all the time. The best thing would be for me to go out somewhere where people speak Spanish and listen to people speaking all the time and just kind of immerse myself. I could spend a bit of time learning the grammar and the kind of theory behind it, but the main thing is just to kind of absorb as much as you can. I think it's similar with film. If you want to communicate with an audience via the medium of film, then it's definitely worth watching lots of movies and kind of absorbing as much kind of art and culture as you can. Now, the difference between spoken language and film is that, say, in Spanish, there will be certain words that mean one thing and that's the only thing they mean. Whereas in film, you don't have to communicate in the same way that everyone else does. But I still think it's worth understanding the kind of basic things and what people will expect when you say a certain thing with your film, and to then understand how an audience will react to your film. So for example, if I used a close-up of a prop in a film, well, the chances are the audience are going to either consciously or subconsciously expect something to happen with that prop, by giving it some screen time and doing a close-up, people expect that something's going to happen of significance. So from watching lots of films, I might have learned that one guideline, and then I can decide whether I want to follow it or break it. So for example, having a gun in a close-up, but then never having the gun go off. That you could use that throughout your whole film, that the audience are expecting the gun to go off, but it never does, and that could be something that you think works for the story. So in my alternative film school, I would definitely watch lots of films, and I'd really think about what it was that I liked about that film, what worked and what didn't work. So I don't mean just reading what other people have written about it and what other people think of it, but really thinking about why you enjoyed it or why you didn't enjoy it, because those are the things, that's your individual and unique interpretation of a film, which is kind of like, in a way, the most valuable thing that you have, your personal response to films, and therefore what you want to make in terms of your own films. And I think another thing to consider is to take inspiration from a whole range of different art forms, so books, music, but also things like photography and paintings, because if you can try and capture the emotion of a song, if that was what inspired you to capture the emotion of a song through a film, then what you're doing is interpreting it into a different medium. So to me, that's a lot more creative and will have a lot more of your own individual fingerprint compared to if you were just kind of copying the exact style of a film director. So it is good to have movie knowledge, but I think it's worth being influenced by all kinds of art, whether it's, foreign films, old films, or even like, the really old art through paintings and books. I definitely think it's worth taking inspiration from a whole range of sources rather than just kind of watching a film and then painting by numbers to try and do something similar. Now, one thing to consider is that I heard a veteran filmmaker talking on some video a while ago, I can't remember which one it was, but saying that actually one of the best things a filmmaker can do is, rather than just going straight into film school or straight into learning about filmmaking, is to just experience life for a bit. So this could be traveling around the world to understand different cultures, or just kind of, doing something that isn't just filmmaking, so that you have something you can draw from in terms of life experience, because those are the most interesting films. Films are recreating a world through the medium of film. So if you don't have anything to kind of draw from, then it's definitely worth thinking about, how you can kind of get involved with communities and just do, real things, rather than always just going straight into, right, what can I do about filmmaking? What can I do about filmmaking? So would film school be a complete waste of time? I definitely don't think so. But I also think that with the right kind of attitude, that you can definitely get something that is just as good, if not better, than the film school experience. So that's pretty much it for this week. As usual, I'll put some more information on the blog, in particular a really good blog post that kind of explains the pros and cons of going to film school, because I know we didn't really tackle that very much in this video. And if you've actually been to film school, I'd love to hear what your perspective is on this whole thing. Feel free to write a comment, I'm sure other people would be interested in reading that too. But that's it for this week, and I'll see you next time.